Common scams: everyone still falls for the printer ink plot. Let me know if this sounds familiar. It's back to school season and you need a printer. You've got homework, projects, and lots of things that you need to print out. And for that reason, you're going to Broby to buy a printer. Luckily for you, there is tons of back-to-school sales. And you'll find the perfect printer for you for only $50. This printer looks solid, comes from a reputable brand, and even comes with ink. And although it was originally $100 for you, today it's $50. You buy this printer from Broby. You go back to your dorm room. And as the school semester begins, you realize your ink begins to get low. Obviously, ink is a consumable item, so you understand you have to replace it eventually, but this seems a bit quick. Regardless, you go back to Broby and begin to find the perfect ink replacement. Now, the first thing that's not really a scam but is definitely irritating is the crazy naming structure of ink cartridges. Like if you somehow forgot to bring the Rosetta Stone to the printer ink section of Broy, you're going to go home empty-handed, or with ink that's not going to fit your printer. Regardless, assuming you know exactly what you're looking for, you find this printer ink was not so much of a deal. The printer you bought only a month ago was $50, but this printer ink is $55. Obviously, this has to be a mistake. And you go to ask the employee if this is right, and they tell you, yeah, printer ink is expensive. It's hard to manufacture. Blah, 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 blah. And you, being clever, decide that, well, if the ink is more, I'm just going to buy another printer. But you go to the printer section only to realize that the printer is no longer on sale. And your options now are a $100 full-price printer or $55 ink. And you take the $55 ink cartridge to the cash register. You check out and you head home. If this sounds even remotely familiar to you, then I'm sorry to tell you you have been scammed. Considering it's 2025, I would definitely say that most people are privy to the fact that printer ink cartridges are a scam. However, I would argue that most people are still oblivious to the fact of exactly how deep this scam runs, which is why this entry is on this list, and I'm going to expose the scam even further. To lay the foundation, the general business model of ink cartridge printers essentially goes like this. These companies produce a relatively quality printer, typically selling them with very thin margins or even sometimes at a loss, knowing that the real money is going to be made on the back end with their ink, and they ensure this back-end business in multiple ways. The first method that these brands use is creating a proprietary ink cartridge that only works with their printers. This ensures that the consumer is not buying ink from other big brands or even smaller third parties that could give a better deal, meaning that the person who bought the cheap printer is now locked into their overpriced ink. But of course, it doesn't stop there. So now that we have a basic understanding of the bait and switch tactics that printer companies use to sell cheap printers but expensive ink, how else are they actually scamming you? Well, for starters, the cartridges that you are buying are basically empty. There are tons of videos online of people cracking open these ink cartridges only for them to be filled with foam and drops of ink. Literally drops. According to some of the YouTube videos I saw, these ink cartridges claim to have 11 milliliters of ink, but actually only contained 3 milliliters of usable ink, which is ridiculous if you keep in mind the fact that you're paying anywhere from $10 to $50 for this ink. Those are some pretty expensive milliliters. Not only are these printer companies forcing you to buy their cartridges and forcing you to pay egregious prices for minimal ink, these printers are also wasting this precious ink that you spent your hard-earned money on. No, literally. Let's say that you want to print a full-page document in just black. Regardless of what you choose, your printer is still going to use black and color ink just because. Now, some people claim that the reason that printers do this is to ensure that your black is as vibrant and as rich as it could be. However, a YouTuber by the name of FSTPers tested this, and he printed out a document in black and then he printed another document in black, but he covered the tip of the color cartridge to see if there was a difference. And what he was able to confirm was both documents looked the exact same, meaning that the colored ink with the black ink made no difference in the final product, meaning that the printer is literally wasting your colored ink, even on fully black prints. So while the printer companies say they're just enhancing your black with a little bit of blue or a little bit of pink, the reality is you cannot say no to this option and use only your black ink. And if you can't even say no to this function, to me that's a scam. But once again, it doesn't end there. Not only are printers wasting your ink by adding colors you don't need to black prints, most cartridge printers go through something known as a cleaning cycle, and these typically occur either every time the printer is turned on or every time the printer prints something. And at a surface level, this makes sense. A printer is using a very fine tip to deliver a very precise amount of ink on a paper without having it bleed or smear. So for that reason, having a clean printer ink tip makes sense. However, this cleaning cycle is extremely wasteful. And not only does it just clean the tip of the cartridge, but in some cases this cleaning cycle causes ink to come out of the cartridge. And over time typically results in half of the ink cartridge being wasted just on this cleaning cycle. You can't tell me that's not at least a bit intentional, or at least hasn't been fixed for a reason. Oh, and don't even get me started on trying to refill these cartridges because, well, first of all, you literally can't even open them. And if you try to, there's an extremely high chance that your printer will just reject the tampered with cartridge to begin with. I've been talking about printers way too much and we have a lot of ground to cover in this video. Oh, don't even get me started on the environmental aspect of all of the wasted cartridges and all of the toxic ink. That's a whole different disaster. The diamond disaster. Similar to the ink cartridge scam, I think that in this day and age most people are privy to the fact that diamonds are not as rare as they say, and the market is for the most part propped up by manipulation and lies. And while I can make an entire video about the sheer depravity of the diamond industry, covering topics like forced child labor and market manipulation, however, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to focus on one specific subset of the diamond industry, the diamond engagement ring scam. Imagine you're on the beach with the love of your life. You're both looking at the sunset when you realize that it's time to pop the question. You hold your soon-to-be fiancé's hand, get down on one knee and present her with a small tiny box. Inside of that tiny box is a diamond wedding ring that costs twice your monthly salary, and you're just praying that she loves it. Your soon-to-be fiancé looks down at the ring and then looks at you only to say yes. This, for most people, is one of the happiest days of their life. However, it's ironic because this is one of the biggest scams that most people fall for. And no, I'm not saying anything about the institution of marriage, but have you ever questioned why we propose with diamond engagement rings? Or think of what would have happened if you proposed without a diamond ring, or at least a ring that resembled a diamond? And while I can't answer that second question for you, I can definitely answer the first. And the short answer is marketing. That's right. The entire diamond engagement ring tradition actually took place because of an advertising campaign. During the late 1800s, diamonds were not rare at all, and huge diamond mines were discovered all across South Africa. And as a result, the market was flooded with many huge raw diamonds, essentially collapsing the entire diamond market. This was obviously detrimental for jewelers and anybody mining, processing, and selling raw diamonds, which is why the mining company De Beers had to think fast and change the trajectory of the diamond market forever. And that they did. Prior to the 1930s, when you proposed to somebody, a diamond ring was not a requirement whatsoever. It wasn't even a consideration. However, that all began to change in the late 1930s with one of De Beers' many marketing campaigns. At this time, De Beers was actively bombarding the public with messaging along the lines of, hey, the only way to prove your love to your soon-to-be fiancée is by giving her a valuable diamond ring. And in 1938, De Beers even coined the term, a diamond is forever, insinuating giving somebody a diamond ring at your proposal ensures everlasting love. Not only did De Beers plan a hostile takeover of the average American engagement, but they also planned a hostile takeover over your bank account, because not only did they want you to buy a diamond ring for your engagement, but they also convinced you that the only acceptable ring was equivalent to 2 months of your take-home salary, which is once again insane and egregious. However, people bought it up and this myth is still perpetuated to this day. But all isn't lost, right? Because even if you fall for this scam, at least diamonds have some sort of market and value, right? Well, that may be true in some cases. You are never going to get the value back you paid for your ring. And ironically enough, in 1999, the De Beers chairman, Nicky Oppenheimer, said, quote, "Diamonds are intrinsically worthless," basically laughing in the face of everybody that De Beers manipulated over the last almost 100 red years. So yeah, De Beers specifically made you feel obligated to buy a diamond ring with your proposal, made you feel worthless if you didn't spend way more than you could afford on it, and also made you feel stupid if you ever tried to sell it and realized that it's actually worth nowhere near what you paid for it. Which makes me think that the whole diamond is forever thing was basically just a slogan ensuring that people never resold their diamonds. But that's just a theory. Regardless, it's kind of just sad that a tradition that is so ingrained within our society is actually based in manipulation and lies. Oh, and if you watched our video a few weeks ago about the craziest conspiracies part 4, then you might remember me that the advertisements of the 1930s need to be studied because they've had such a detrimental impact on society, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Let's keep moving. Textbook trickery. Picture this. You are in the kitchen looking at your laptop with your family all anxiously waiting around you. You have just received an email response from your dream college either accepting or denying your application. In this moment feels like it could be make or break. Reluctantly, you click on the email without even looking, and slowly you untwinch your eyes only to hear your parents scream and to see the email say accepted. This is such an exciting moment and milestone that should be celebrated. A few months goes by and the beginning of the school semester starts. You go to the college orientation and you are given a list of books you need to buy for your courses for this semester. Awesome. You decide to go to the school bookstore only to realize that these textbooks were more money than you've ever spent in your entire life. For a lot of students, this is not only disheartening, but extremely detrimental. Because if you've just paid out of pocket or got into thousands and thousands of dollars of debt to go into school, only to then need to pay thousands more in textbooks, you could be putting yourself in a very bad spot. And if you're in school, your capacity to work is already low, meaning that you're setting yourself up not for the future you thought you had, but for a lifetime of debt. If you currently are or were a student within the last 20 years, then you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that college textbooks are literally a scam. Obviously, college textbooks are extremely expensive, but the scam goes far beyond that. In 2010, the average college student in America spent $200 per year on textbooks and school supplies, with the majority of that being textbooks. Similar to buying a diamond engagement ring, buying expensive textbooks seems like this is something that people have always done, but that's actually not the case. Over the last 30 years, college textbook prices have increased by 800%. And this gross exponential growth in textbook price doesn't only have an effect on the student's wallet. Almost 65% of college students in America opted out of buying textbooks because they were too expensive as they should. Although not having the most up-to-date textbooks does directly have an impact on their ability to learn, affecting their education, the whole reason they're in school in the first place.